Your fence line is in violation of Ordinance 3B, and your livestock are non-compliant.
1 second, the desert night was holding its breath, quiet, cold, and wide open. And the next, that ting sound, sharp and metallic, sliced through the air. They were trying to cut through my front gate at 1 in the damn morning, but out here in Arizona, that just makes you trespassing. I was already outside, Mossberg loaded, waiting. People romanticized the quiet countryside, but I, Art Kincaid, former Army Corps of Engineers, knew better. Quiet is only peaceful when you trust what's around you. And I trusted my 80 acres of hard ironwood dirt and the freedom I paid for. My ranch wasn't just property. It was a sanctuary built on retirement savings and sweat equity. For 2 years, life was predictable, slow, entirely mine, until the morning I found that boot print. After a heavy rain, I was walking the perimeter fence line when I saw a single, clean print pressed deep into the mud. It wasn't a ranch boot. Those have a distinct, worn profile. This was a heavy lug sole, wide heel, built for tactical footing and quick pivots, the kind you find on a private security contractor or a serious player. That alone made my neck tighten instantly. I studied it like a fault line, wrong angle, wrong tread, wrong man for this part of the county. I knew then something systematic was coming. I just didn't know its name yet. That name arrived in a thick, cream-colored envelope 2 days later. Cypress Bend Preserve Homeowners Association, or C.B.P. HOA, half a mile away, suddenly claiming authority. I nearly snorted when I read the first letter. Visual nuisance violation. My barn roof, which had seen more weather than their entire subdivision, was disrupting their aesthetic harmony. A violation issued by people with zero jurisdiction over my land. The audacity of paper pushers trying to dictate aesthetics to the desert. I laughed loud and burned that letter, but they kept coming. They escalated quickly from the roof to the unacceptable noise levels of livestock, my goats, and the disruptive glint of my workshop solar array. By the 5th letter, I wasn't laughing. I realized this wasn't neighborhood drama. It was a deliberate, escalating campaign. I didn't hear her white Lexus SUV before I saw the dust trail it deliberately minimized. Most folks approach a ranch gate tentatively. Penelope Vance, the HOA president, drove up like she expected a red carpet and immediate compliance. She stood gripping her clipboard, her pastel pantsuit perfectly starched, radiating an expensive, manufactured calm that didn't belong on this dirt. She didn't offer a greeting, immediately announcing, "Mr. Kincaid, I'm Penelope Vance, president of Cypress Bend Preserve Estates." I nodded once. "Ma'am, you've got no reason to be at this gate, and my truck isn't leaking." She cited concerns about my property's structures, fencing, and odors, claiming they negatively impact the visual integrity of her community. I leaned in slightly, resting my hand on the cool steel bar between us. "Lady, the only visual integrity out here is the horizon. You built your village across the road from working land. Did you honestly think you wouldn't smell nature, dust, or honest labor?" She suggested I simply join the HOA for access to their protections, standards, and community. I cut her off. I spent 20 years serving something bigger than myself and abiding by real rules. Now I just want my land and my quiet. That's the only community I'm subscribing to. Her eyes hardened into small, icy pebbles. Refusal to cooperate will only inconvenience everyone involved. The air shifted tight. She stepped back and with chilling efficiency snapped 2 pictures of my locked gate, documenting, collecting ammunition, then spun on her heel and drove away. She was the type who heard, "Try harder," and I knew her next move would involve the same contractors whose tread I found in the mud. The quiet didn't last long. The next fancy envelope cited my workshop solar array as a nuisance. Since my array was 3/4 of a mile away, installed at a lower elevation behind a line of juniper trees, the only way they could see it was by actively watching and surveying my property. That crossed a line. A week later, just as the sun set, I saw a thin, sharp line of green light, a precise measurement laser or rangefinder, drifting across the barn wall before vanishing. They weren't just watching, they were measuring for potential legal or physical vulnerabilities. 2 days after that, I found a commercial-grade GPS tracker with a strong magnet clinging to the axle of my truck. I peeled it off and held the cold plastic box in my hand, recognizing the point where annoyance ends and actual conflict begins. I sent a picture to an old core buddy who confirmed. That's contractor level, Art. They aren't messing around. Penelope wasn't just complaining. She was executing a plan. The next move wouldn't come in an envelope. It would come in heavy boots. Trouble came on a Wednesday morning in a black Ford SUV with overly tinted windows, idling outside my gate. Two men, matching black polo shirts, heavy boots, the kind of deliberately anonymous uniform that says we're official without actually providing accountability. One stepped forward with a slick, practiced smile. "Morning, Mr. Kincaid. We're here on behalf of Cypress Bend Preserve. Just want to talk. Clear the air." I kept my window halfway up, maintaining a physical boundary. Penny Vance had a chance to clear the air. She polluted it instead. He tried to frame it as a neighborly chat about HOA bureaucracy, but his eyes were calculating. "I have no neighbors," I replied, my voice steady. "Just my land. And right now you're standing too damn close to it." His buddy, who moved with an ex-military stance, feet perfectly balanced, scanning constantly, stepped up. "Look, Mr. Kincaid, join the HOA. Nobody cares about your roof. But keep fighting, and people start getting real curious about what's going on behind those fences." The implication was sharp enough to cut steel. "We will look for trouble if you don't comply." I pointed out the gravel line. "That marks my private road easement. You're 2 steps from crossing it. Understand the terrain." I gave them 10 seconds to leave. They blinked, recognized the threat of a legal line being drawn, and walked slowly back to their truck. I waited until the dust settled, then meticulously logged the entire encounter. Faces, plate, audio, in 3 separate encrypted locations. Those men weren't here to clear the air. They were testing the perimeter for weakness. The pattern was clear. Penny escalated from letters to surveillance to hired pressure, and the next move would be physical. I don't do surprises. That evening, I checked every element of my defenses. The gate, my literal line in the sand, was solid and the rolling encryption keypad was reset. I meticulously tested the floodlight panel, high-lumen LEDs, bright enough to turn midnight into a stadium. I also checked the cameras, 8 thermal-capable units feeding into my private server, secured against remote access. I reviewed the Arizona law. Defending property with force is justified if someone breaks onto private land after dark with criminal intent. Bolt cutters on a locked, reinforced gate is unequivocally forcible entry. I walked to the safe, the hinges moving silent and smooth, and pulled out the Mossberg 590. I chambered the first round slowly. Click, click, click. The sound was heavy, final, a ritual of commitment, not bravado. Later, I must have nodded off in the recliner. The alarm pinged. Camera 2. Motion detected. 3 silhouettes at the gate. Not 2. An escalation in force. Same black Ford. Same mean energy. The third man held industrial bolt cutters. The cutter man raised the tool, and ting. A slicing note of metal biting metal. That was forcible entry, the exact moment the law shifted in my favor. I slipped out the back door, grabbed the 12-gauge, and let the dark swallow me. I watched him swing again. Ting-tunk. The second strike bounced uselessly off the reinforced latch I'd welded last year. He cursed. I waited for one more swing, then hit the floodlight switch. The world detonated in blinding white. For stadium-grade LEDs roared to life. The 3 men jerked back instantly, throwing their arms up. The cutter man froze, bolt cutters hanging in the air like an accusation. That's when I stepped out, slow, deliberate, shotgun in both hands, and delivered the universal language of deterrence. Chalk. The sound of that pump action, it's not a threat, it's a commitment. All 3 men recognized it instantly. I call 911 for injuries, not trespassing. I stated, my voice low and steady. You decide which one you leave with. Silence, then chaos. They dropped the tool and sprinted, stumbling over each other, piling into the Ford. Mud flew as they fishtailed and disappeared. Quiet again. I found the bent bolt cutters in the mud, and through the trees, the faint glint of Penelope Vance's silver SUV, parked, lights out, watching the entire spectacle. My jaw tightened. This wasn't a boundary dispute. It was a planned ambush. I looked at camera 2 and said, "You picked the wrong ranch, Penny. You forgot about the camera timestamp." The next morning, I called Senior Deputy Sloan directly, bypassing 911, to report attempted forced entry. Sloan and Deputy Rollins arrived. Sloan confirmed the bolt cutters were contractor grade and meticulously logged the damage. The video, especially the blinding floodlights and the undeniable 1:03 a.m. timestamp, left no doubt. I showed them the still frame of Penny's SUV watching from the tree lane. Sloan filed the report, but warned, people like her use paper as armor. She will push back with lawyers. Around noon, I went to the station. Penelope was there with her attorney, Daniel Keeler, already launching a preemptive legal strike. Keeler claimed the men were accessing a path referenced in a 1997 legacy easement agreement and presented a thick, official-looking folder. I immediately recognized the deception. The folder's documents used a modern font, high-resolution satellite imagery, and a county seal that didn't exist until 2005. That document's newer than your haircut, I told Keeler, watching his slick smile dissolve. Before they could fabricate a response, Deputy Sloan returned. We've reviewed Mr. Kincaid's footage, Sloan said flatly. Your security detail's presence at 1:03 a.m. does not align with your claims. When Penelope, attempting to deflect, called me a threat to the community, Sloan didn't look up from his notes. The only threat I'm seeing right now is forgery. The opening act of her legal attack just became evidence against her in a criminal case. 2 days later, the sheriff's digital forensic analyst confirmed the document was a modern fabrication, created recently using Adobe Illustrator. The real break came when Travis Miller, the bolt cutter man, was picked up at an urgent care clinic on an outstanding warrant for extortion after he twisted his ankle running from my gate. He sang immediately, confirming he was hired and paid cash by Penelope, and that her attorneys drafted the fake legacy easement agreement to provide legal cover for what was essentially land theft, an organized scheme to shift my boundary 200 feet inward and absorb my gate. The district attorney opened a full case for criminal conspiracy and document falsification against the HOA leadership and its legal counsel. The morning after these findings, Penelope, attempting to control the public narrative, held a press conference. She stood at a podium, tearfully claiming her security team was conducting a routine boundary wellness check and that I was unstable and aggressive. It was a flawless performance, but I had the receipts. I met the reporter at my gate in work boots, letting the truth stand on its own. 3 men came to break through my gate with bolt cutters at 1 a.m. The 6 p.m. broadcast was devastating. It played Penny's fake speech, then immediately cut to my video. The bolt cutters, the chalk, the sprint, the fall, the escape, all time-stamped 1:03 a.m. The internet erupted. Now she was fighting the law, the public, and the undeniable truth recorded on my server. At the Kaufman County Courthouse, Penelope was visibly defeated, her expensive clothes hanging loosely. My lawyer, Rebecca Green, methodically and calmly presented the 3 pillars of our case. My pristine deed, the sheriff's reports detailing the physical break-in, and the irrefutable digital evidence of forgery. The forensic analyst declared the 1997 easement a modern fabrication. Then Travis Miller, the hired muscle, testified. He was hired by Ms. Vance, paid cash, and told to apply pressure to make him join the HOA. When Penelope took the stand, her lies were instantly shredded by the physical evidence and her former associate's testimony. The judge closed his notebook, and his voice, though calm, fell on Penelope like a hammer. Miss Vance, your testimony is inconsistent with the physical evidence and contradicted by multiple witnesses under oath. Right now, you are digging a hole you cannot climb out of. Judgment Day was heavy. The judge found Penelope guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud, falsified documents, and attempted coercion. She was sentenced to 4 years probation, a $250,000 fine, and permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. The Cypress Bend Preserve HOA was ordered to pay $720,000 to Mr. Kincaid for property damage, legal expenses, emotional distress, and punitive damages. Furthermore, the judge prohibited the HOA from any future annexation attempts or boundary changes without direct county oversight. The fight was definitively over. The HOA didn't survive the massive financial judgment, draining its reserve funds. Services collapsed, dues skyrocketed, and residents revolted. Within 2 months, Penelope's house hit the market quietly. She fled the state. I didn't care where she went. I cared that she was gone. A week later, I walked down to the gate and welded a fresh, thick steel plate right where the black Ford's headlights would hit it. I painted the letters myself. Private land. Trespass after dark. Bad decisions. Try me again. When I stood back and looked at it, the road felt right. Quiet. Mine. In Arizona, peace has a price. Sometimes that price is endless paperwork, and sometimes it's knowing when to hold a shotgun. Now, I want to know what you think. Penelope Vance argued she was protecting her community's property values. I argued I was protecting my constitutional right to property against fraud and corporate bullying. Who was really in the wrong here? Was Art right to use that level of confrontation? Or should he have tried to negotiate with a woman who was already plotting land theft? Jump down into the comments below and let me know your thoughts, especially if you've ever had a run-in with an HOA yourself.